I didn't invite my parents or brother to my wedding after years of being ignored. Now he finally admitted he faked his illness just to steal attention from me. Hey everyone. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I recently got married to my now husband, Jamie, who's 29. We made the difficult choice not to invite my parents or my younger brother Neil, who's 25, to the wedding. I hadn't planned on talking about this publicly, but after getting bombarded with texts from family calling me selfish, I figured I'd put it out there and see if maybe I really did handle things the wrong way. A little background. I grew up in what looked like your average middle-class family in the suburbs, about an hour outside of Chicago. We had a decent 4-bedroom home with a nice backyard, took family road trips every now and then, and pretty much blended in with every other family on our street. But everything flipped upside down when I was 9. It started when Neil, who was 7 at the time, had some trouble breathing during a soccer game and got diagnosed with asthma. The doctor said it wasn't a particularly serious case, pretty manageable, really, but from that moment on, my parents acted like he had some life-threatening condition. It was like a switch flipped, and suddenly, everything in our household revolved around Neil and his health. Growing up, I watched my parents overlook pretty much all of my milestones because Neil supposedly needed their full attention. I still remember when I was 12 and had a piano solo at our school's winter concert. I'd spent months practicing this one piece that my teacher said was usually given to older, more experienced students. My parents promised me they'd be right there in the front row. But that evening, they canceled at the last minute, saying Neil had an asthma flare-up. Later, I found out from my grandma that Neil had been fine, just hanging out playing video games when she called. And sure enough, his flare-up conveniently cleared up right after my performance ended. Then came my 16th birthday. My grandparents flew in all the way from Florida just to be there for me. They arrived early to help decorate and get things ready for a small party at the house. My parents were supposed to pick up the cake and some party decorations. Instead, they took the car and disappeared for hours, saying Neil needed to go to urgent care. My grandparents scrambled to keep the party going, ordered pizza, ran to the store for a last-minute cake, but honestly, I spent most of the night worried about my brother. Later, I found out it was just seasonal allergies. Over-the-counter stuff would have handled it. Oh, and that fancy cake my parents had picked out? Neil ate most of it during the hospital visit. My parents had some too. By the time I saw it, there were maybe 2 slices left. The pattern just kept going. When I graduated high school, I was valedictorian atop of a class of 430 students. I held a perfect GPA and even juggled a part-time job to save up for college. I was so proud. But my parents didn't show up to the ceremony. Neil was apparently having a panic attack over his finals, which weren't even scheduled until the next week. I ended up sitting with my best friend's family at dinner afterward. They gave me a card and treated me like I mattered. That meant more to me than I think they realized. College was another uphill battle. While a lot of my classmates had parents helping out financially, I worked 2 jobs to cover everything. I waitressed on weekends and worked in a lab during the week. Most nights, I was studying between midnight and 4 a.m. before class. I managed to keep a 4.0 GPA in chemical engineering, but I burned myself out doing it. Meanwhile, my parents had stashed away a whole college fund, but not for me. It was for Neil, just in case his health caused extra costs, even though by then his asthma was totally under control with a simple inhaler he rarely used. When I decided to get my master's, I knew I was on my own. I applied for every grant and scholarship I could find, but still had to take out loans. After 2 exhausting years of research and study, I finally got my degree. I was thrilled when my parents said they'd come to the ceremony. I even saved them seats right up front and made dinner reservations at a nice place afterward. But that morning, they texted me saying Neil had a migraine and needed them. That night, Neil posted photos from a party at his friend's place. He looked totally fine, grinning, drinking, having a blast, while my parents sat with him monitoring his condition. About 4 years ago, I met Jamie at a research conference where we were both presenting. He comes from this warm, close-knit family that actually shows up for each other. On my first birthday after we started dating, Jamie threw me a surprise party with his family and my coworkers. I literally cried when I walked in. Nobody had ever done anything like that for me. His family welcomed me with open arms. They came to my events, cheered on my accomplishments, and treated me like I belonged. When I got promoted at work, his parents sent flowers to my office. When I published my first paper, his sister framed the first page and gave it to me as a gift. I didn't even know how to react. I wasn't used to being celebrated like that. When Jamie proposed last year, after 3 amazing years together, we started talking about the wedding. But I couldn't picture my parents being there without something going wrong. I had this sinking feeling that Neil would have some kind of incident right in the middle of our vows, or my mom would dash off the dance floor because Neil texted her from the parking lot. After a lot of late-night talks and soul-searching, Jamie and I agreed it would be better not to invite them. It wasn't an easy decision. I lost sleep over it. I kept wondering if I was just being spiteful or immature. But I knew I couldn't stand there on my wedding day, look out at the crowd, and see empty seats, or worse, see them leave halfway through because Neil needed something. Jamie told me he'd support me either way, but he agreed with what I wanted deep down. We planned a small, meaningful wedding with around 80 people, mostly Jamie's family, our friends, and some colleagues. I did invite my grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, but asked them not to mention anything to my parents or Neil. Most of them understood. They'd seen this dynamic unfold for years. And you know what? The wedding was everything I dreamed of. Peaceful. Joyful. No drama. Jamie's dad walked me down the aisle. His mom helped me get ready that morning. His sisters stood by me as bridesmaids. My grandparents were there, dancing with me and beaming with pride. For the first time, I got to have a day that was truly mine, not hijacked by someone else's crisis. So my parents ended up finding out about the wedding from social media. One of my cousins had posted some photos from the reception, and not even a few hours later, my phone started blowing up. I had text after text, voicemail after voicemail, most of them angry. My mom called me ungrateful and said I'd always resented Neil for things he couldn't help. My dad accused me of intentionally embarrassing them in front of the entire extended family. Now they're telling anyone who'll listen that I'm a dramatic attention seeker who's punishing them just for being good parents to a child with health issues. That stung. Hurting my parents was never the goal. But I also couldn't let my wedding turn into another moment in my life where everything revolved around Neil. I just wanted one day, just one, where I could be the priority. Jamie thinks I did the right thing, and most of his family does too, but some of my relatives have said I should have at least given my parents the opportunity to show up and support me. Ever since the wedding, I've been wrestling with doubt. Did I make a huge mistake? Did I burn that bridge for good? There's this part of me that feels genuinely guilty, but another part that knows how many times they've made me feel invisible because Neil always came first, even when he really didn't need to. Update 1: I wasn't expecting so many people to read my post, but I've been going through the comments, and honestly, it's been eye-opening. A few people brought up something called medical abuse by proxy and suggested that might apply to how my family handled Neil's so-called health issues. I'd never heard that term before, but I've been reading up on it, and it's giving me a lot to think about. I guess I never considered that what went on in my home could actually be part of a recognized pattern. Things have gotten worse since I first posted. My parents are now saying that Neil had to be hospitalized because of how stressed he got after finding out he wasn't invited to the wedding. They claim his anxiety got so bad he could barely breathe and had to be taken to the ER. But here's the thing, my cousin Kay told me she saw Neil that same day at a baseball game. He was drinking and laughing with his buddies in the stands, having a great time. I didn't even know that until Kay called to talk about all the drama that's come up since the wedding. Jamie's mom, who's been a pediatric nurse for over 3 decades and works at a hospital that specializes in respiratory care, actually tried to help smooth things over. She called my mom, hoping to find some kind of middle ground and maybe even suggest a small celebration where my parents and Neil could be included. During the call, she gently pointed out that Neil's health issues didn't really line up with the way he lives his life. The guy goes hiking all the time, plays in 2 rec leagues, parties with friends, and even ran a 10K recently. It's all there on his social media. My mom didn't take that well. She hung up on Jamie's mom mid-sentence, then immediately called Jamie's sister to complain that his mom was meddling in things that didn't concern her. That whole situation reminded me of something from high school that I'd honestly buried. I was 17 and had been working part-time for months to buy a dress for homecoming. I'd been nominated for the court and wanted to look good. That night, just as I was getting ready, Neil suddenly claimed he had severe stomach pain. My parents rushed him to the ER and told me to stay dressed in case they made it back in time. I waited for hours, pacing around in that dress and checking my phone nonstop. Eventually, my date gave up and went to the dance without me. I missed the entire thing. And what did the doctors say? It wasn't appendicitis or anything serious, it was gas. Literally gas. Something that could have been handled with a couple of pills from the drugstore. By the time they got home, it was too late. That dress stayed in my closet with the tags still on. I never wore it. At first, even my mom's older sister, my aunt, called me to say I'd brought shame to the family by excluding my parents from the wedding. But after we talked for a bit and I walked her through everything, story after story, she started to soften. She actually said, "You know, your mom has always made it about Neil." She brought up this family reunion from a few years back. I had just landed a major promotion, one that put me in charge of a whole new research team. I tried to share the news over dinner, and my mom brushed it off instantly. She redirected the whole conversation to Neil getting a part-time job at a grocery store. My aunt said she'd seen that kind of thing happen over and over again, but didn't think it was her place to interfere. After the wedding, Jamie's family hosted a small dinner at their house for relatives who hadn't been able to attend. During the meal, his dad stood up to give a toast. And instead of focusing on Jamie, he talked about me. He listed specific things I'd achieved: my degrees, my promotion, my research. He said how proud they were to have me as part of their family. And I almost broke down right there at the table. I wasn't used to being acknowledged like that. I've spent most of my life having my accomplishments pushed aside or flat out ignored. That moment meant the world to me. Right now, I'm still figuring out where I stand with my parents. I don't know if I want a relationship with them anymore, or if one is even possible. Jamie's been by my side through all of this, reminding me that wanting a peaceful, happy wedding wasn't selfish, especially after everything I've gone through. His whole family continues to show me love and support, even while some of my own relatives keep pushing the idea that I should say sorry for leaving my parents out. At the moment, I've muted their messages. I just need a break. These past few weeks have been overwhelming, and I need space to sort through my emotions without being constantly guilt-tripped or attacked. Update 2: It's been about a month since I last posted, and a lot has happened. I met up with my cousin Kay for coffee yesterday. She's one of the only people in the family who's been on my side since the wedding. During our chat, she told me something I didn't see coming. Years ago, Neil admitted to her that he used to exaggerate or even fake his symptoms to steal attention. Apparently, when they were both teenagers at a family event, he got drunk and confessed that he liked causing chaos on days when I had something important going on. He was jealous and knew that our parents would believe anything he said without question. It became a sort of twisted game to see what he could pull off. Kay never told me before because she didn't want to stir up drama between siblings, but after seeing everything that happened with the wedding, she felt like I deserved to know. And just when I thought I couldn't be more shocked, Kay showed me some text messages from my mom. Messages from the week leading up to the wedding. In them, my mother was planning to create some kind of disruption during the ceremony. All of this happened before my parents even knew they weren't invited to the wedding. In the messages Kay showed me, my mom was already talking about how Neil might need extra support that day since I'd be getting all the attention. She actually wrote that he could conveniently feel unwell during the ceremony, which would give them a reason to remind everyone what truly matters. Reading that, it felt like a gut punch. It confirmed what I'd feared for so long but never had proof of. This wasn't just poor judgment. It was intentional. Kay ended up sharing those texts with a few relatives who had criticized me for leaving my parents out. Several of them have since apologized. Even my uncle, who admitted he'd seen the favoritism over the years, told me he didn't speak up back then because he thought it wasn't his place. Kay and I spent hours talking after that, going over so many past moments from our childhood that suddenly made a lot more sense. Like the time Neil mysteriously sprained his ankle at a family picnic, the same day I was supposed to sing a solo at a community choir event. Or the summer I got accepted into a prestigious science program at a university a few hours away. I couldn't go because Neil had a sudden health flare-up, and my parents said they couldn't possibly leave him. I even offered to take a bus home alone after the program, but they told me that was selfish and that family sticks together in a crisis. Except the crisis was always Neil. I've tried reaching out to him directly since all this came to light, but he hasn't responded. Kay thinks he's probably overwhelmed, maybe feeling ashamed after she confronted him about the texts. She said she told him she was disappointed he would go along with something meant to sabotage my wedding, and he apparently got defensive, accusing her of siding against the family. Jamie's been my anchor through all of this. He keeps reminding me that none of it is my fault, and that I deserved a wedding day focused on love, not drama. His mom gently suggested I consider therapy to help process all of this. And honestly, she's probably right. After years of gaslighting and second-guessing myself, it's been a lot to take in, finally realizing I wasn't crazy or overreacting all alone. Then yesterday, my dad left me a voicemail that felt like one last blow. He said I'd torn the family apart, that I was making Neil's health worse, and that if I were a real daughter, I'd apologize and make things right immediately. I didn't respond. Kay told me she's had to cut off certain toxic relatives to protect her peace, and that sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is walk away even if it hurts. Right now, I'm focusing on married life and building something good with Jamie. It's strange looking back and realizing that what I grew up thinking was normal was really just emotional neglect and manipulation. I'm trying to teach myself how to accept praise and kindness without cringing or waiting for the other shoe to drop. Update 3: It's been 2 months since I last posted, and something unexpected happened. I got a long email from Neil. I wasn't holding my breath for any kind of contact, especially after he ignored my earlier messages, but what he wrote genuinely shocked me. In the email, he apologized. Not just a quick sorry, but a real, detailed apology for the years of manipulation. He even said he understood why I didn't invite our parents to the wedding and agreed with the decision. Neil explained that he's been in therapy for anxiety and depression, and through that process, he started confronting some deep-seated issues from our childhood. He said that even as a kid, he noticed our parents only showed intense emotion or care when he was sick. What started out as minor exaggerations about asthma slowly turned into full-blown attention-seeking behavior. It snowballed, and by the time he was a teenager, pretending to be sick had become a coping mechanism, especially when he felt threatened or saw me getting recognition. He admitted that our parents constantly rewarded his illnesses with affection, special treatment, and a pass on responsibilities. He said it trained him to chase that attention any way he could. And by the time we were in high school, it had become second nature to fake symptoms anytime I had something important coming up. He mentioned specific times, like the night of my homecoming dance and the science program I missed, and said he deeply regretted those choices. But what struck me most was this: Neil said that while I was neglected, he was trapped too. He said our parents made him dependent on being sick to feel loved, and that he's finally starting to understand how damaging that was for both of us. He told me that when Kay showed him our mother's texts, where she planned to stage a crisis at my wedding, it made him feel physically sick. That moment, he said, made him realize how deeply broken things really were. He's now trying to distance himself from that dynamic. He said he's been working with his therapist to build healthier relationships and learn how to be someone outside of his illness narrative. But there's a complication. When our parents found out he had apologized to me, apparently he'd left his email open on a shared family laptop, they flipped. They threatened to cut him off financially if he kept siding with me. Even though Neil graduated 3 years ago with a business degree, he's still relying on them. They pay for his apartment, his car, and he only works part-time for a friend's startup that hasn't really taken off. So their threats were serious. But despite that, he told me he's planning to stand up to them this time. He's looking for a full-time job and wants to move into a place he can afford on his own. He even asked if we could grab coffee soon and talk face-to-face. I told Jamie about the email, and he was incredibly supportive, though cautious. He suggested that if I do meet up with Neil, it should be somewhere public, and that I should take things slow. Rebuilding trust doesn't happen overnight. In other news, Jamie and I are moving to Boston next month. He accepted a new position at a research institution there, and I just got hired by a biotech company that perfectly fits my background. It feels like the right time for a fresh start away from the family chaos, and towards something that feels like home. Neil mentioned wanting to visit us once we're settled, and while I'm open to it, I'm also keeping my boundaries firm. As for my parents, I've continued to ignore their attempts to reach out. Their messages keep swinging between angry guilt trips and over-the-top emotional pleas, but none of them include accountability. It's always about how they feel, never about what they did. I'm still working through it all, still trying to unlearn the guilt I've carried for so long just for wanting to be seen. But I'm in a much better place now than when this all started. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm not just surviving, I'm finally starting to live.